Today, we are looking at a truly monumental piece of intellectual history. Back in 1979, an American philosopher named Richard Rorty published a book that basically took a massive brick and threw it straight through the window of Western philosophy. The book was called Philosophy and the Mirror of Nature, and let me tell you, it sent absolute shockwaves through university departments worldwide. Why? Because it didn't just offer some tweak to a new theory, it argued that almost everything we thought we knew about the human mind, and about truth itself, was actually a colossal historical accident.
So, let's start by challenging something that probably feels like complete common sense to you. Look around the room right now. Do you believe that your mind is truly just a passive cosmic mirror? Because for hundreds of years, the absolute brightest thinkers assumed that inside your head is a polished piece of glass. And when you look out at reality, the outside world casts an accurate image right onto it. If the mirror is clean, boom, you get truth. If it's dusty, you get bias. It feels super intuitive, right? But what if that completely natural feeling is actually just a massive dead end?
Part 1. The Mirror of Nature. This whole trap starts with a very elegant but deeply flawed metaphor. On one side, you have the objective universe, right? Pure reality, just sitting out there independent of us. And on the other side, you have the subjective mind, our inner glass mirror. Under this view, the ultimate goal of human intellect is representation. We desperately want our ideas to perfectly correspond to the outside world. And because of this setup, philosophers basically handed themselves the most important job in human culture. They became the supreme mirror mechanics. They were the ones holding the specialized polishing cloths, dictating what counts as genuine truth and what is just a blurry smudge on the glass. The problem? This setup forces us into an endless panic about whether our mirror is broken.
Part 2. Inventing the Human Mind.
You know, the ancient Greeks didn't actually have this concept of a giant, private, non-physical container called the mind. If we look at the timeline, this was actually invented in the 17th century by René Descartes. It was then built upon in the 18th century by thinkers like Locke and Kant and accepted as absolute gospel right up until Richard Rorty's disruptive intervention in 1979.
To really understand why this happened, we have to rewind to the 1600s. The new mechanical sciences of Galileo were explaining the universe as clockwork matter in motion, and honestly, Descartes was terrified. If everything is just physical mechanics, what happens to human freedom? What happens to the immortal soul? So to save the soul from physics, he literally split reality cleanly in half. He separated res extensa, which is physical, measurable matter, from res cogitans, which he described as an unextended, non-spatial inner realm of thinking stuff. Suddenly, feeling a pain, doing math, and feeling love were all lumped together as mental representations happening inside this newly invented inner space.
And Descartes gave this inner theater a truly magical property: incorrigibility. Basically, this is the philosophical idea that you literally cannot be mistaken about what is playing on your own inner screen. You might be wrong that the wall in front of you is actually yellow, but you absolutely cannot be wrong that you are experiencing the sensation of yellow. Your access to this inner mirror was declared immediate, perfect, and completely immune to doubt. But by doing this, Descartes created the impossible mind-body problem. Think about it. How on earth does an immaterial, invisible thought in this inner room cause a physical, heavy arm to raise?
So to expose how entirely artificial this whole setup is, Rorty asks us to imagine an advanced alien race on the other side of the galaxy. He calls them the Antipodeans. Now, they are just like us in every practical way. They build cities, they write poetry, but their language just evolved differently. They literally never invented words for minds or souls. So, here's the question. How do they talk when they accidentally touch a hot stove? Imagine the clash here. A stuffy 17th century Cartesian philosopher touches a hot stove and screams, "Oh heavens, I feel a sharp pain in my mind." But an Antipodean touches the exact same stove and just matter-of-factly yells, "Ouch, my C fibers are firing intensely." The Cartesian philosopher would be desperately trying to correct the alien, insisting, No, you must have an inner, immaterial mind experiencing the raw feel of pain." And the Antipodeans? They'd look at him in complete bewilderment. They'd say, "Look, we have nerves, we have sensors, and we have spoken reports. Why on earth would we invent a ghostly, unmeasurable second world called the mind?" Rorty's devastating point here is that we don't naturally have this inner mirror. We just adopted Descartes' really strange linguistic habit, and then we spent 300 years panicking over the riddles it created.
Part 3. The Skyscraper of Knowledge.
Now, the philosopher John Locke accidentally cemented this problem. Locke is famous for saying the mind is a blank slate. But he mixed up two entirely different things: explanation and justification.
An explanation is just a causal, biological story. Light hits your retina, neurons fire, right? But justification is a social practice. It's how you actually give reasons to your peers about why you believe you're looking at an oak tree instead of an elm tree. Locke thought that by mechanically explaining how data hits the inner mirror, he was somehow automatically proving why our beliefs are socially justified. He completely confused biology with logic.
Then, Immanuel Kant stepped in, and he made philosophy the ultimate authority. Kant argued that the mind wasn't just passive glass. No, it was an active organizing machine, basically preloaded with conceptual categories like space, time, and cause. By claiming to study these universal rules of how the mind organizes experience, Kant turned philosophy into what he called the tribunal of pure reason. It became the master discipline, the VIP bouncer that sits on the Supreme Bench, checks the credentials of physics, biology, and art, and judges all human knowledge.
This whole obsession birthed the professional mission of modern philosophy, which is known as foundationalism. They started viewing all of human knowledge like this massive, towering skyscraper. And for the skyscraper to survive, it desperately needed absolute, indubitable bedrock. If that foundation was even a little weak, they feared the whole structure of science and morality would just collapse into pure chaos. So philosophy assigned itself as the sole guardian of that bedrock.
Part 4. Shattering the Mirror. I want you to really think about this for a second. Seriously, what actually happens to the entire skyscraper of human knowledge when the bedrock it supposedly rests on turns out to be a complete illusion? Does the whole thing fall down? Or was it just floating all along?
Rorty points to a kind of mid-20th century demolition crew. Two brilliant philosophers who essentially knocked out these foundational pillars from within. First, Wilfrid Sellars destroyed something called the myth of the given. He proved that you literally cannot separate pure reality from human language. Knowledge only begins when you enter the social space of giving reasons to other people. Then Willard Van Orman Quine destroyed strict conceptual boxes. He proved that our beliefs are actually a holistic, interconnected spiderweb, not rigid categories. With Sellars and Quine, Kant's foundational bedrock totally collapses. The skyscraper doesn't fall, it's just suspended in midair. The mirror is shattered.
Part 5. Tools, not truths.
So what is the crucial point here? Abandoning the mirror metaphor just means we have to change our very definition of truth. Rorty introduces this idea of epistemological behaviorism. Instead of looking inside human brains for magical links between words and the cosmos, we just look at human behavior. When we say a belief is true, all we are really saying is that, right now, our community has looked at the evidence, we've tested the claim, and we agree it is the absolute best explanation we have to solve our current problems.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core of pragmatism. The old view saw truth as correspondence. That's an invisible, magical match between a word and the universe, which, by the way, is impossible to actually verify since we can't step outside of our own language to check it. The new view sees truth as commendation. Calling a statement true is basically giving it a badge of honor because it actually works. It builds bridges, it cures diseases. Vocabularies like physics, ethics, or poetry aren't mystical matches to reality. They are practical tools forged by human beings. They are just like a hammer, a paintbrush, or a scalpel. You just use the right tool for the right human problem.
Part 6. Keeping the conversation going.
Once we get rid of the need to guard some fake bedrock, the philosopher's job completely transforms. Rorty contrasts systematic philosophers with edifying philosophers. The systematic builders of the past, like Descartes and Kant, they wanted to lay down universal algorithms and close the debate forever. But edifying philosophers, they are disruptors. They know that any closed system eventually becomes an intellectual prison. Their job is to walk into the room, question dogmatic assumptions, suggest fresh metaphors, and absolutely break open the conversation.
Now we have to talk about this famous quote. Rorty says truth is about what is good for us to believe. This often causes massive panic. Critics jump up and claim it's dangerous relativism, where you can just believe whatever you want. But to be totally clear, Rorty isn't saying you can jump off a building and decide you can fly. Physical reality will brutally stop you. He simply means we prefer science over astrology, and we prefer democracy over tyranny, not because the universe carved those preferences into the stars, but because they are practically the best tools we have forged to reduce cruelty, protect human freedom, and survive. Ultimately, Rorty is asking us to throw out the judge's robe. We don't need a supreme referee of pure reason. We just need open-minded conversationalists. Human culture is a grand, thousands of years old dinner party with scientists, poets, artists, and citizens. Our minds are not cold, passive mirrors. We are creative storytellers and tool makers.
So, as we wrap up this explainer today, the provocative question I want to leave you with is this. Without some cosmic script locking you into place, how will you use your own unique vocabulary to keep the grand conversation of humankind going?
Please like and subscribe.